is Friday Night Lights with Brandy Flores. Brought to you by Outdoor Living Concepts, your outdoor cooking specialist.
Welcome back. It's Friday Night Lights week 2, and last week we saw the return of high school football after more than a year. Every team playing with excitement, but at the same time shaking off some rust, but still an electric atmosphere for all the players and the coaches. So let's get to tonight's action. We'll start with Shadow Hills hosting Palm Desert. Both teams picked up wins last week. Shadow Hills beating La Quinta handily, and Palm Desert winning against Palm Springs in a thrilling game that went down to the last play. Lots of hype going into this game, so let's jump in. The Aztecs get on the board first, scoring on a nice touchdown pass. They take an early 7-0 lead, and that was it for the first quarter. Both teams fairly quiet, but in the second quarter, it was kind of more of the same. Palm Desert would score one more time on a long run from running back Hani Joe and take a 14-0 lead at halftime. Going into the third quarter, Palm Desert still on a roll. Joe scores again on a shorter touchdown run to give the Aztecs a 3-score lead. Add another touchdown from quarterback Daniel Carter on this QB sneak, and Palm Desert is cruising up 27-0. Carter scores one more time on this crazy run, breaking tackles and bouncing off multiple defenders on his way into the end zone. That brings that score up 33-0, and that's what the final would be. Palm Desert shuts out Shadow Hills in dominant fashion.
We started off a little slow, but then second quarter came, and I feel like we had the momentum on our side. You know, defense was making stands. O-line did what they had to do. Daniel, quarterback, made big plays.
2 rushing touchdowns. I could not give it up more for my linemen. They balled out today. Absolutely stepped it up and allowed me to do that, for sure.
We'll stay in the DEL for our next game, Xavier Prep at Palm Springs. Palm Springs lost a heartbreaker last week to Palm Desert, but still coming out of the gate strong. Meanwhile, Xavier pulled off a 14-point comeback win against Rancho Mirage. Both teams carrying momentum into this game, and both successful in the first half. Palm Springs would strike first, pounding their ground game early, but the Saints would answer back quickly. Both teams would go shot for shot a couple more times in the first half, but Palm Springs would pull ahead closer to halftime and take a 28-13 lead at the half. And unfortunately for the Saints, they wouldn't get any closer. Palm Springs continues to dominate in the second half, scoring seemingly on command, and they take the win 42-13. A good showing for Palm Springs a week after a close loss to Palm Desert.
Offensive line played much better than they did last week. They improved tremendously. We ran the ball hard. Defense, we had a couple breakdowns, but overall they played pretty well. They were aggressive. They were pursuing. Very happy. Very happy.
I feel pretty good. We played as a team. We played hard. Came in hitting, and we just stuck through it to the end.
Our last DEL game of the night, La Quinta at Rancho Mirage. Rancho Mirage lost last week in close fashion, while La Quinta dropping their game by several touchdowns. But let's see who can turn it around this week. The Rattlers come out of the gate ready. They score right away on a short touchdown run to go up 7-0. La Quinta would tack on a field goal, but Rancho Mirage keeps their momentum, scoring again on a quarterback keeper to go up 14-3 in the first quarter. The Blackhawks answer back on a long sideline touchdown pass to cut the Rattlers' lead and make it 14-9. But that's as close as La Quinta would get tonight. Rancho Mirage continues to find the end zone, and it gets ugly in the second half. And when it's all said and done, Rancho Mirage takes the win 50-16, bouncing back nicely from last week's hard-fought loss. Now to the DVL, we'll start with 29 Palms at Coachella. Coachella winning handily last week with quarterback Hugo Sandoval having a great night. Meanwhile, it's the first game for 29 Palms. Let's see if they can start their season out on a positive note. Coachella Valley strikes first with an 11-yard touchdown to Jonathan Martinez, and they keep rolling. Coachella Valley quarterback Hugo Sandoval connects with Martinez 3 times by the second quarter, including this amazing catch for the 65-yard touchdown. I mean, look how he just hauls it in over the defender and keeps running for the touchdown. Coachella Valley is now leading 21-0 after this one over the Wildcats. 29 Palms tack on a couple of touchdowns of their own to decrease the deficit at halftime. The score was 27-14, but the rest of the game was Coachella Valley scoring more touchdowns and the Wildcats doing their best and trying to keep up. But in the end, Coachella Valley would take the win, beating 29 Palms 46-33. In our second DVL game on the night, Desert Hot Springs hosting Adelanto out of the high desert, the first game of the year for the Golden Eagles. Earlier this week, it looked like they might not even have a game in when Yucca Valley paused all football activities after a player and coach tested positive for COVID-19. But their athletic director was able to schedule a home game against Adelanto on short notice. So the Golden Eagles are able to get out on the field after all. Let's see how they did. Adelanto looking to get back on track after a tough loss in their first game last week. They would get off to a quick start, going up 14-0 in the first quarter. But an unfortunate scene late in the first quarter, one of Adelanto's players going down with an injury. The game was paused as an ambulance was called. A scary situation there. Wishing our best to Adelanto. The game would get going again, and in the end, Adelanto comes into the Desert Hot Springs and leaves with the win, 30-6. A tough first game for the Golden Eagles, but hopefully they can bounce back next week. And finally, we did have a Thursday game this week. Indio playing their first game of the season, hosting a young Cathedral City team that's off to an 0-1 start. The Rajas would get on the board first, but after that, it was all Lions. Quarterback O'Shea Wallace ran for an 80-yard touchdown and connected with receiver Frankie Valentino 3 times for the Lions. And hey, it's easy to perform as well as the Lions did last night on offense when your defense has your back. Cathedral City's defense was definitely the highlight of the evening, only giving up 1 touchdown. And I said earlier in the week that it would be an active day for the defensive backs, and it definitely was. They did not let up all game and did an amazing job putting pressure on the Rajas offense. And in the end, the Lions take the win 29-6. They improved to 1-1 on the season. Meanwhile, Indio starts the year 0-1. All right, a busy Friday night of local football. Let's quickly recap tonight's scores in case you missed anything. In the DEL, Palm Desert is off to a hot 2-0 start. Their 20th win in a row in the DEL, actually, shutting out Shadow Hills 33-0 today. Palm Springs bounces back after their close loss last week and beats Xavier Prep 42-13. And Rancho Mirage also bounces back, beating La Quinta 50-16. In the DVL, Coachella Valley improves to 2-0 after beating 29 Palms 46-33. Desert Hot Springs loses their season opener to Adelanto 30-6 in a non-league game. And on Thursday night, Cathedral City improved to 1-1 on the year after beating Indio 29-6. And another edition of Friday Night Lights is in the book, but for this week, I had to recruit some help from my fellow sideline warrior, Shad Powers, sports reporter over at the Desert Sun. Shad, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, no problem. Just take a little time out in my writing bunker to hang out with you tonight. What's going on?
Well, first, there's a really busy night for some high school football, so let's just start breaking down the games. You were personally covering the La Quinta and Rancho Mirage games, so tell me, what were your biggest takeaways from that?
Well, it was an impressive show by Rancho Mirage for sure. The final score was 50-16, and Cesar Vela, their talented quarterback, I think the best quarterback in the desert right now, was just in command the whole time, running the ball, passing the ball. He had over 100 yards both ways. He counted for 5 touchdowns. Really, it was just a crisp performance by the Rattlers tonight. Yeah, they were in control the whole way, and as you could tell by the final score, it's been a tough start for La Quinta. You know, they're a little down in numbers from what they're used to. And, you know, they're finding it tough out there. But I was impressed by Rancho Mirage tonight.
Yeah, definitely impressed, especially with that end score. And I mean, so last week, Rancho Mirage kind of lost a heartbreaker to Xavier. They let them come back in the game and end up winning. So what do you think the biggest improvement from last week to this week was? Was it just first game jitters last week?
Well, I mean, they were definitely motivated by that loss. Everyone said, you know, they sort of felt like they let one get away. So you could kind of tell that they started the game right out with a lot of aggression and focus. You know, I'm sure they had one of those tough weeks of practice as far as, you know, the coaches getting on them, and they were disappointed in that loss. I think it was just about, you know, just being fundamentally sound, not a lot of penalties, not a lot of turnovers, you know, converting first downs. They just sort of moved the ball, you know, precisely down the field, and it was impressive to see.
Yeah, you love to see it. And now, so we'll move on to our next game, which is Shadow Hills hosting Palm Desert tonight. Palm Desert, 20th straight win in the DEL. Palm Springs got close last week, but I mean, who do you think with these upcoming last 3 games of the season, who has a chance of stopping them?
Well, I mean, it's going to be tough. Probably if I had to pick of their remaining schedule, the Rancho Mirage team that I saw tonight, I think might give them the toughest battle. La Quinta always plays them tough, no matter how lopsided it might seem like it should be. That's a big rivalry game. You'll learn that's probably the biggest rivalry game in the desert, La Quinta versus Palm Desert. So that usually is close, even if the teams aren't equal. And then lastly, you've got Xavier Prep, who pulled off a great win over Rancho Mirage last week. So you shouldn't cut them out either. But I think if Rancho Mirage is playing really well, that's probably the team that could knock off Palm Desert. But boy, they are on a streak, so it's hard to imagine that.
Yeah, definitely on a streak. And they have a young team. Their starting quarterback, Daniel Carter, who had 2 rushing touchdowns today. Their running back, Hani Joe, juniors. So they've got, and then so many other of their starters are also really dominant. One thing Coach continues to say is that this is a young team, but they're still performing this well. What do you think sets their program apart from, at this point, the rest?
Well, I mean, I got to give credit to Coach McComb. Certainly, he has a system that's working well. Boy, they just really know how to run the ball. They've had 2,000-yard rushers each of the last 2 years. Of course, that's not going to happen this year, only playing 5 games. But you mentioned Hani Joe. He looks like the next great back in their sort of pipeline. Offensive line play is big there. And then a tough defense. I know he's expected the defense to be a little ahead of the offense this year. And tonight, it sounded like both sides were working perfectly. So they're going to be tough to beat. And I am a big fan of this Daniel Carter. We got to see him for the first time last week. Sounded like he had another great game tonight. So, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight for their winning streak because they have really impressive on both sides of the ball.
Definitely. I mean, we can't wait for the rest of the season. And hopefully when we have August, we'll have a full regular season we could really judge them on, I should say, right? So now moving on to the next game, Palm Springs, Xavier, really quick, your thoughts. What is Palm Springs doing well this season?
Well, they're just a powerful team. They're our biggest, strongest team. And I can imagine, use that to their advantage tonight against Xavier Prep, who is, more of a finesse team. They have a lot of tough guys too, but the depth and strength of Palm Springs, especially, with Arian Kapler, the running back, is so tough to bring down. Even if you do hold him down most of the night, you're taking a beating, and that sort of adds up. And then in the fourth quarter, it's even tougher to stop him. So I think Palm Springs definitely does it with their physicality. And they've got a nice, versatile offense too. The quarterback, Isaiah Goad, has some nice receivers, and they can pass it a little more than they used to this year as well. So, yeah, Palm Springs is a talented team. I wasn't surprised they beat Xavier Prep, but that was a pretty good effort by Xavier Prep as well to go on the road and hang right in there with them.
Yes, definitely. And like you said, I think that Palm Springs has a dominant running game. Well, thank you so much, Shad. That is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Be right back because we're going to look ahead at next week. And here is a look ahead at next week's schedule. It is rivalry week. We can't wait. The Cook Street rivalry with Palm Desert traveling to Xavier Prep, and the Mike Gates game, Palm Springs at La Quinta. That is all we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us on week 2 of Friday Night Lights. I'm Brandy Flores. Have a great evening.